Hello again. So this is the fourth video, I think it is, in our series looking at sound desks. So we've got an Allen & Heath Z18 sound desk that we've got for a job coming up. We're not sponsored by Allen & Heath or anything like that. And we're just using it to talk through how sound desks work, how to set them up, and what the different sections on the desk do. So this video is all about the auxiliary sends, which in this desk are these row of grey and dark grey knobs across the middle here. And this desk has got 4 auxiliary sends, auxiliary 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now, before I get into the depths of talking about auxiliary sends and how they work, I'm sure we're all familiar with our sound desk of setting a balance of the respective sources, the respective faders. Now, depending on your church, you might just have a couple of microphones and a piano, you might have more of a band. But in either event, we've got the master volumes, which on this desk are the kind of the red coloured ones on the right hand side of the desk. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the fact that we set our balance of the respective sources, and if you like, the sound from these faders is then sent to these faders as a master control of the volume, and then that goes out to your speakers, your amplifier and your speakers. And no matter how we have these faders, if we turn the masters up or down, the overall volume goes up and down in proportion to how we've mixed it here. Auxiliary sends often confuse people, but they do exactly the same thing. Now, if I just go over to the iPad for you, I'll zoom in so you can see what we've got here. There's 2 types of auxiliary sends. I'll come back to that. So on this desk, we've got the 4 auxiliary sends per channel, and they do exactly the same thing as the faders. We mix varying amounts of the different input sources, different knobs across the desk. So we turn them up to whatever we need, and they are mixed. So we combine each of the channels in the auxiliary send, and on this desk we've got a knob further on the right hand side, which I'll just move the iPad over so you can see that. So on this desk we've got the main slider, the masters, which is what's in the centre of the frame there, and then above it we've got 2 knobs that say aux 1 master and aux 2 master. So just as the faders mix our sound, and then the red ones are the master volume out of the speakers, the auxiliary knobs, we turn them up to the amount that we want of each input source, and then we've got a master control on the right hand side of this desk for the respective auxiliary. So let me move the iPad back over to the different types. So we've got 2 different types of auxiliary send, and those are defined by either pre-fade aux send or a post-fader aux send. Now that might sound a bit techy, but basically on this desk, aux 1 and aux 2 are always pre-fade, and aux 3 and aux 4 are always post-fade. Sometimes they're switchable, but this desk, 1 and 2 pre-fade, 3 and 4 are post-fade. Now what that means is whether it's pre or post fader is whether the position of the slider, the fader, has any effect at all on what the auxiliary is doing. So the reason why we've got a mix of pre and post fade is aux 1 and 2 being pre-fade, their sound isn't affected by the level, the volume of where the slider is at. No matter where the slider is at, auxiliary 1 and 2 will always give the same amount out of the outputs on the desk. And pre-fade auxiliaries are what you'd use for setting up a fullback mix for a band. I play guitar, I need worship on guitar, so I want to be able to hear the same amount out of my fullback speaker in front of me whether the same amount, irrespective of whether I'm turned up a bit more or turned down a bit on the desk. Probably turned down more often than up, but there we are. But I want my foldback mix to stay the same. Similarly, the singers in our band, we've got quite a large band in our church, the singers with their foldback wedge on the floor want to hear the same amount through the foldback monitor, rather than it changing according to how the person on PA decides what balance they want out of the main speakers. So for foldback mixes, you use pre-fade senders, because we don't want it to change with the PA position. For something like a overflow room, or maybe a send to an induction loop, so a loop system for the hard of hearing. So if you've got a creche maybe, in that instance we would use a post fader auxiliary, because they follow the position of these faders. So if it's in a, just thinking a typical service, whilst if you think of how a service might start, you might have the one mic up for the person introducing or starting the service, welcoming from the, typically probably from the lectern at the front, and we only want that person going out of into the creche or into the overflow. So we use a post fade because only that channel will go out to the other room, because I've turned the others off. Now when the singers come on, I might turn the singers up or the band up. I'll just use these 4 faders to represent that, and I will turn the lectern mic down. Now because I've turned the lectern mic down, because it's a post fader auxiliary, the lectern mic now isn't going to be sent to the creche, but the singers or the band microphones are now going to be sent through. If I'd use a pre-fade going to the creche, then it would get the sound of everything all the time, and we don't want that. We only want to send the sound to the overflow or the loop system of the active, if you like, the microphones that are in use at that given moment. So that's where you would use a post-fade auxiliary. You would also use a post-fade if you're using an effects unit, so if you're using a reverb or a bit of echo or delay. Now I'm not going to get into that on this video, that's a little bit more into engineer territory rather than volunteer territory, but you would use a post-fader aux for that. Now on this desk, the auxiliary 1 and 2, the pre-fade auxes, have got a volume. Aux 3 and 4 don't have a volume. Don't know why, there's not a separate volume knob for those. So pre-fade are used for setting up a foldback mix generally. That's pretty much the only time you use a pre-fade mix. You wouldn't use a post-fade mix for a foldback unless you were really stuck and had to, but it's not ideal for your band or those listening to it. Whereas any sort of overflow scenario or induction loop, anything where you want the sound, where you don't want to be hearing the sound all the time, you would use a post-fade mix for. So that's auxiliary sends.